Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Patriots Pulse podcast. Me and Andrew were back. It was a week hiatus, but we're both in school. We were both pretty busy, so we never got a chance to preview and go over the previous week's game. So, with that being said, we have a lot of football to talk today. So, before we get started, Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good coming off of a really solid win against the Bears. Patriots went into Soldier Field and came out victorious 19-3. They were pretty commanding of the game throughout the entirety of it. They held strong and they showed that they're just the better team and they had the game in control throughout. So that
Yeah.
was really good to see. So I want to start off with just key takeaways that we saw from them this weekend. Carlos, I don't know if you want to
Mhm.
start off.
Um, sorry. Before like I get into week 10, I wanted to kind of speak a little bit about something that you just mentioned. I think right now the vibes are pretty good as far as like the organization. Well, I mean, like the locker room has always had good vibes, and you could tell. It's not like the players are just talking out of their ass. If I'm being honest, like they're like being serious when they say that they're like really close and the vibes are good in the locker room. The morale's still high, but I feel like the fan base is kind of getting a little bit more of that um, hope, like sense of hope now. And I would attribute that to one, Drake May, yes, but also because the defense played really well. So it does kind of tie into week 10. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because if you look at teams like the Jets, for example, they have the same exact record. Their vibes are horrible right now. Like it's like the end of the world for them right now. So it's like the I guess you could say like the trajectory is just going up with this team. So tying that into week 10, I just think that they've been doing really well. Week 10 was just by far the best defensive showing. It gave me a lot of hope for the defense in terms of like who's going to be here for the long term and who's going to develop and who's going to be part of this rebuild. Um, there's leaders stepping up on the defense as well. There are new guys getting added to the defense as like a little wrinkle into things, which I'm talking about Brendan Schooler, for example. Del Pettis obviously was someone else that stood out. The offense, it's not the takeaways for the offense can't be too crazy just because I don't think they performed that well. Um,
Yeah,
Drake May is obviously showing improvement every week, so that's a plus. But in terms of like their actual whole performance for the offense in particular, wasn't the best, but there's still a lot of hope. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. The aspect of hope with this team.
yeah, I completely agree with you with the vibes. I mean, uh, if you look at the Bears, they're similar to the Jets. They're not a connected team at all. They have no chemistry. I mean, DJ Moore looks like he doesn't want to even be out
Yeah.
there. Keenan Allen just refused to block on one wide receiver screenplay for them, and it got blown up. So it's like that culture, that team culture there is awful right now. And I think what we're seeing from this team right now and just Mayo's team overall is they're all connected. They have great chemistry together and they're all unified. I mean, like you see it in the videos that like the Patriots media account posts with Drake May mic'd up during the game or Jonathan Jones doing the "oh yeah" chant at the end. Everyone seems just happy there, and that is really good for a 3-17. Like
Mhm.
seeing just how everyone is right now and everyone's morale. Yeah, and again, like you mentioned, the defense they had one of their best games of the season. They started off really strong, um, but I mean the defensive line was much better. They were actually getting pressure on the quarterback, a season high 9 sacks, and they were also able to control the run a little bit. I mean, Swift had a couple like not breakaway runs, but a couple runs where you're like, all right, like come on, like you
Mhm.
can easily stop that. But yeah, they performed a lot better. The coverage was much better. I mean, but what were the stat lines for the Bears receivers? It was they were awful. Like I
Yeah,
know,
I don't think anyone had over. I think it was like 30 yards. I don't think anyone had over 30.
like that's crazy. And I mean, it is in part due to the Bears' just terrible offensive scheme. Um, and some of the plays they ran were just straight idiotic. But the defense did have a really good game. And hopefully that's an upward trajectory from here. Um, and yeah, offense, like you said, uh, they didn't really show too much like excitement
Mhm.
for us, but I'm trying to figure out what to say here because there's a lot I want to talk about with the offense. Like the offensive line, for example, I don't think we can really like I don't know what I'm trying to say. But offense looked a little better than in recent weeks. They weren't really able to get the run game going a ton. The offensive line is still an issue. I mean, they let up a lot of pressures. Vidarian Lowe had back to back just like blown up um, pressures on May, and that was pretty bad. But I mean, May, we continue to see how well he's able to operate outside of structure. Statistically, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this season, outside of structure and being able to make plays on his own, and the plays he's able to generate outside of structure. So that's always a huge plus. And I think in terms of May's performance, that we're starting to really see him take command of this offense and like how see how much of a leader he is. I mean, you saw it in
Yeah.
again the videos that the Patriots posted him mic'd up. He after the Jalen Polk touchdown, he immediately ran down the sideline thanking every single offensive lineman that was out there for him. I mean, he's really emerging as a leader really early into his career, and I think that's huge for them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways in for like in regard to the whole week was Drake May's leadership. I think that's like the big storyline right now. I was listening to Andrew Callahan's podcast, Pat's Interference. He was talking about how he's seen so much development from Drake May compared to when he first started training camp to now. And not only that, he was also talking about how like just like the overall, I guess you could say, command he has on the team has completely changed, but it wouldn't have been such a big storyline if they had lost. So the fact that they won, coupled with his whole midweek speech to the offense that like lit a fire under them, and that's what motivated them, all this and that, like that wouldn't have mattered as much if they had lost. But since they won, now it's something to really build off of, and it's gotten momentum in the locker room. Drake May spoke about it today himself, just saying like I like how he well, I don't want to say I like, but he kind of just mentioned briefly at the very end of one of his quotes today during his presser that he said something along the lines of like, yeah, those guys listen to me, they look at me, and they respect me. So that's not something that a rookie would normally say super early on into their career. And it's only his after his fifth start. So that means a lot. And so that's why I'm saying like the win itself mattered so much in terms of his development as a leader. Um, I loved watching the mic'd up segment of him just thanking everybody, praising everybody, like hyping them all up. Like that's a side of him that you don't really get to see just because he's not like animated. Like he's vocal but not animated. That's like two different things. So just in general, that was the biggest takeaway for me. His leadership and the command he's starting to have over that locker room.
Yeah, and I think if they, I mean, I don't know how likely it is. We'll discuss that later in the show, but just if they can stack a win against the Rams, they can get two in a row. That would be so huge
3 out of the
culturally.
last 4, yeah.
Yeah, three out of the last four. That would be awesome. And you really got to start building a winning culture. And you, at this point in the season, again, I've said this multiple times, but you want to bring in free agents, you got to show them when you put May in, things changed and things are going to change heading into next season. That's got to be your selling point to bring in free agents.
Yeah.
Also, the money. You got a lot of money,
Yeah.
but
No,
like,
really quick, just to add on to what you just said, that's like the biggest thing that I hope people really understand that it's not pointless wins. Like they're not winning for no reason, or it's not like they're losing spots in the draft. Like there's a reason. They want to build a culture of winning, right? And they want to have people see that culture that they're building. That's how you attract free agents. And like you said, coupled with the amount of money they have, they need these wins.
yeah, I mean, I feel like, I mean, some of the people I've talked to, they're just like, no, like just lose, get a higher draft pick. We want Ted McMillan. We want so and so. Like, first of all, it's really not that big of a deal. But the real the real positive point of positive factor of them winning these games later in the year, like you said, is building a winning culture, building a good team culture, and that is more important than falling down the draft order four,
Hmm.
4 or 5 spots.
Yeah.
You gotta teach this team how to win. More specifically, you gotta teach Drake May how to win and continue
Hmm.
to connect these wins together. And Jonathan Jones made that a point in the locker room after the game. He said we gotta continue to stack these wins and go from there.
Yeah, and I think like going along with that same idea of like let's build a culture of winning. You can't like it's a good thing that they had such that they still do have high such morale, camaraderie, like everyone's really close, like everyone's still having fun. But when you create a culture of losing, along with that mentality, it just kind of gets into this cycle of like, you know what, we're not winning games, but I'm still playing with my best friends. Like, sure, that could work when you're younger and not in a professional league, but this is the NFL, right? So you need to have both winning and that culture. So when it's coupled with losing instead of winning, that's when I think issues start. That's when these teams, like these franchises that are constantly at the bottom trying to rebuild, trying to figure out what's going to flip their franchise perception around. They just have that mentality of like, you know what, we know we're not good, but at least we're having fun and we're all happy in the locker room and all this and that. Like, especially with a coach like Gerard Mayo too, who's he said he wants to be more of a CEO coach, more of a players coach. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just talking about the culture that they need to like gradually build towards. Like it wasn't going to click right away. So they're on the right trajectory. But like you said, they need to stack these wins. They need to like imagine if they finished what 7-10. That would be a good season. Like honestly,
That really
yeah.
would. I mean,
So
they're one win away right now from. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
they're
yeah.
one away from matching the record last season. What this
Hmm.
season was all about improvement and the
Hmm.
future. Mayo said it before the season started. He said this season is about the future.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see that a little bit right now.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why honestly I didn't really agree with Elliot Wolf when he was trying to word his like he threw like a word salad out there during one of the first like pre-season pressers or something like that. That he was saying like, yeah, we know we're a competitive team, like we built a competitive like you didn't, right? Like you have a lot of young guys that need to develop, and we're seeing that development right now. So yes, they could be competitive in some instances, but it's not bad just to say like we know we're young and we're going to gradually get better instead of saying, yeah, we know we're competitive right away. Like the first 5 weeks of the season, you were not competitive other than like the Bengals and Seahawks game, right? So
Mm.
it's like you can't put that perception out there because then everyone's gonna be like, that's what their competitive like side looks like. That's not a good look. So I just think that their trajectory, I'm gonna say it once again, like their trajectory is going really well right now. They just need to build on it. And if, like you said, if they win two in a row, that'd be wonderful. Like, honestly, when's the last time they won two in a row? I genuinely don't
I
know.
saw it was the last time they went on a winning streak. I don't know if it was 2 in a row. It might have been 3 in a row,
Mm.
but it was 2022. It was weeks 8 through 11.
You see, so it's been a long time. And if they can get these two wins, win three of the last four, I think that's going to do so much for the culture and so much for their team morale and boost their confidence even more.
And the fact that if they win this weekend, the fact that they stack a win on top of another for the first time since 2022 at Gillette, that would be huge. And before we move on to anything else, I also just wanted to like add that if they lose this week, I know that as a fan base, I feel like we can be impatient sometimes. I'm gonna put that out there. I feel like we can be impatient sometimes. So we gotta be patient. And I know this week we're all talking about after that win, like we're talking about right now, we're talking about the team morale and the vibes. that isn't going to significantly change after one loss.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if they lose, then everything's just going to seem awful again. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this team's going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like the narratives change on a week to week basis so quickly
Yeah.
this season. I think we just gotta focus on improvement this season and the future.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened last week against the Titans. So I think that's a perfect way to put it. That sure, it's a week by week basis. It's a what have you done for me late? What have you done for me lately? League, but as a fan base of a team that's openly rebuilding, like we just have to understand that one week doesn't define who they are, and there's still so many positives that they could build upon.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So moving on from that, do you have any other thoughts on May's performance? I know we touched up on his command and the leadership that he's showing right now.
Mhm.
But is there anything else you had in mind?
Just he has so many eye popping plays during the games, and it's just like you never felt that the last couple seasons with the quarterbacks they had. I'm not going to name specific ones, but you never felt that with previous quarterbacks. And on top of that, there's just so many instances that he makes a play and it's like it's an inch off of being like a successful play or counting, right? Or there's other plays that it's like if he had a number one wide receiver, if he had a star receiver, like that would have been a touchdown or that would have been a big completion. There's so many instances of that, and it gives you so much hope just knowing like if they do the correct thing and build around him and add weapons and give him a competent offensive line, like the sky's the limit for this guy. He could legitimately be like a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I it's crazy to honestly, I was seeing people like joke around saying like, oh, in the next 5 years, the Patriots are going to be back in the Super Bowl, like with Drake May, because of Drake May, like if they do things correctly. As crazy as it is to like hear that, there's some truth to that. Like that could
Oh no, yeah,
legitimately
there definitely
happen.
is truth. Yeah.
Yeah, like, but it's been so long as a fan that it's like really I don't think so. I think we're going to be rebuilding. Like that's my mindset now. So it's like they just need to get out of this stage of the timeline and just build around him correctly.
And I get why everyone's so like why people are so impatient. We sat through what we had to sit through for the past 4 years of
Yeah.
just straight mediocrity. I mean, there's no other way to put it than just mediocrity. They weren't like, I mean, last year they were one of the bottom teams, but like
Mhm.
they were always just middle of the pack. Besides the one year we got killed by the Bills in the playoffs, but yeah, can we talk about that throw May made, had
To
it running
Booty?
towards the sideline,
Yeah.
little
Or which one? There was two.
the one
There's
where
two that come
Osborne
to mind.
stepped out. It
Oh,
would have
that
been a
one. That
touchdown.
one.
One where Osborne stepped out. Can we like that is such a good throw. That is such a
Yeah.
good throw. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like
To me, the more impressive one was the incompletion to Booty where he almost caught it over the defender. He almost lost him. He rolled out to the left and he threw it. Rolling out left, he threw it right. Like he sidearmed it like 30 yards downfield. I even posted it and I said, like, this is like he has some crazy why do I keep doing that? He has some crazy what if plays. And people got mad, like, oh, we're posting incompletions now, or like that was a horrible throw. Like, do you understand how hard it is to make that throw? Rolling out left with people coming at you, and then you sidearm it the opposite direction. Like that's an incredibly difficult throw. That I like
mhm.
80% of people on this earth cannot do that.
He
Like
placed it
legitimately.
perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. And he even said he's like, oh, that's on me. Like I should have let him a little bit more. Like no,
No,
that
Osborne stepped out.
yeah, it's whatever. I mean, he has some crazy like what if throws that like I'm saying they're like an inch off. Someone doesn't make the catch. It's just I I'm really excited about what he's gonna become in the future.
Me too, definitely. But shoot, what was I gonna say? I had something in mind. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like we're not gonna pretend like Drake May is this perfect quarterback already in his rookie season. He's had some low lights, like that pick to TJ Edwards was pretty bad,
Yeah.
but it's really refreshing and promising to see how much he's changed the offense so far in terms of production, like almost immediately after he was
Mhm.
announced the starter and he was placed as the starter. Like
Mhm.
their points per they're up. I think it's about 7 points per game
Yeah.
from May starting from Brissett's tenure. Like that's a huge that's a significant increase.
Yeah.
And like the fact he's just able to do what he does out of structure and turn nothing plays into something, that is a talent that a small portion of quarterbacks in the NFL have that they can do consistently.
Yeah.
So that is just really promising to me, and especially with the fact that like the O line he's playing behind, that they don't give him enough time to sit in the pocket and throw, but also these receivers aren't getting open in time for him to make
Mhm.
those quick throws when the O line does block. Like it's stuff like that, or just like I feel good. I feel really good about this
Mhm.
guy.
Yeah, yeah. It gives like once again, I'm gonna go back to the same word I've been using. It gives me a lot of hope for next year and the years to come, obviously. But like next year, they have the potential to do so much in the offseason to make next year 10 times better than it is now.
But yeah, so moving on, we wanted to mention just some notable performances, like some under not underrated guys, but like guys who really took a step forward last weekend. Like one, for example, Jeremiah Farms. Did he have two
Mhm.
sacks? Two sacks
I think he
or
did.
one and
Yeah,
a half?
he.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Alcantara does too.
like one
Yeah.
and a half, two sacks. Big, honestly, a career day for him. Big step
Mhm.
up for Jeremiah Farms. He came from the UFL. I think it was 2 seasons ago, or was it
He was
early
he
last
played.
season?
Yeah, he played in so many different. Like he played in community college. He played at Friends University. That's the one I always think of because it's like, what is Friends University? He like he's been all over, and now he's like kind of getting a good stride. Because the only reason he played a lot too was because Jaquelin Roy got hurt, and not to undermine what he did, but now that we're kind of talking about the defensive line or just performances in general, the defensive line had the best performance out of everybody. But I do want to preface that the Bears were playing with so many backup linemen, and I don't want to be like a party pooper, but that's just something to keep in mind because sure the defense looked really good and they got 9 total sacks and everything, but the Bears' offensive line was in complete shambles. And should they have done that? Yes, obviously. Like I'm glad that they did what they had to do with that offensive line, but that's not going to be an every week thing. I might be completely wrong, and next week they might, get 10 sacks instead. But it's just you just have to keep in mind that they were definitely the above average opponent or matchup on the line. So it's just it gives me hope and hopefully it gives them momentum and everything, but that's just like a little thing that you have to think about that he was Jeremiah Farms in particular was going up against like a third string or right guard or fourth string right guard. Like those little nitpicks you just have to keep in mind when you think about his performances because I don't want people to think like, oh, we have a star on the defensive line next to Christian Barmore. Because I know, like you said, people are very like week to week based that they're gonna think now like, oh, we have a guy that's gonna be here for forever and he's gonna be a star next to Barmore. Like, just relax a little bit.
Like fantasy football, a player goes off for like 30, and you're like, oh my god, that like he's taking over their offense. No,
Yeah,
he's still the same player he was last week.
yeah,
Let's calm down
yeah.
on that a little bit. But yeah, no, but Jeremiah Farms, I think he is still a really solid rotational player,
Hmm.
and I think he can turn into a really solid like. Well, I mean,
Lawrence
backup is good.
Guy.
Like yeah, like a Lawrence guy. That's
Hmm.
a really good comparison actually. Like
Hmm.
he can turn into one of those guys.
Hmm.
But he did have a really good day. Del Pettis, the UDFA out of Troy, awesome day. He had a sack as well.
Hmm.
He was all over Cole Kmet the entirety of the afternoon. Like he played outstanding in coverage. He had a sack. It was a great day from
Yeah,
Pettis, and I think people should really get familiar with his name because he,
yeah.
especially with Peppers out and the uncertain future of Jabril Peppers, like Pettis and that safety group, they got a lot of guys there.
Yeah. Yeah, like if anything were to happen with the Peppers case and he's no longer on the team, I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, they have a perfect replacement in Pettis. Like they're fine,
Hmm.
but that is someone that you can be confident in. And it's not gonna have to be like, oh, when we come draft day, we need to prioritize getting a safety because they have guys like Marte Mapu, they have guys like Del Pettis on cheap rookie contracts too. They have team control over them for the next three years. So those guys are definitely people that you have to keep in mind. They also had another safety that performed really well too. Not many people view him as a safety, but Brendan Schooler, who came out as a safety from the University of Texas, he had himself a day. First time playing I think it was like he had only played 2 defensive snaps before Sunday's game, like in his whole
Around
career.
that, like, yeah,
Mhm.
barely any.
So he got his first sack. They used him as a QB spy in the Longhorn package where they had 7 DBs on the field. Um, he gave Caleb Williams problems, and I'm not even saying like that one. Sorry, that one in particular. He he sure, like I said, the offensive line was not helping Caleb at all. But when Caleb would roll out and try to do like how we're talking about, like what Drake May does with the bad offensive line, Brendan Schooler's fast. Like he is fast, and he was
Yes.
getting to him so fast, and Caleb couldn't do anything with the ball if Brendan Schooler was coming his way. So if they had put like who's a good example, like a Joe Giles Harris or a Marte Mapu as the spy instead of Brendan Schooler, I genuinely think Caleb Williams would have had a couple more completions, a couple more positive plays, as opposed to Brendan Schooler being the spy. So a lot of credit to him. He stepped up, and I'm honestly fully expecting him to have more of an involvement on the defense when they play mobile QBs now.
And also, fun fact, Mayo, I think it was Mayo who might have said it after the game, but someone asked him about the package where they obviously put in Schooler, and he said he named it the Longhorn package because Schooler went to Texas. But yeah, even like over the summer, Mayo, I think it was Mayo. It could have been another coach, but I'm pretty sure it was Mayo. He said that they want less like special teams, like pure special teams players. And that's why we saw Brennan Schooler taking reps with the starting defense or the second team
Mhm.
defense throughout training camp. And he's finally got put in and he made the best of his opportunities. And I think that we could see Schooler back out there next week.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Is there anyone else you want to mention?
Notable. I mean, Austin Hooper had one of his better games of the season. I know it wasn't like like a crazy good performance, but he produced more than Hunter Henry, which I'm not worried about in terms of like, oh, did he jump? There's like Hunter Henry washed. No, it's just like he made some big plays. He got them some good first downs. He made that really good catch that May put right on the money where the DB couldn't get it. I think it was like a 32 yard completion or something like that. He had some really good plays. So he had a notable performance. Other than that, I can't think of anyone on the offense that had a really, really good performance. Ben Brown didn't allow any pressures. I'm almost positive he didn't allow any pressures or sacks. Um,
One, but you might be right about that.
yeah, I just know he had like a bounce back game compared to how bad he did against Jeffrey Simmons. And the Bears D line, they're like no joke. Like their defense is
Yeah.
pretty good. So I'm not saying they had like a crazy good day as an offense, but the offensive line held up relatively well against a good D line.
I did. And another player that just popped in my mind, it wasn't like a crazy showing or anything, but Jermichael Hasty, did he outsnap Gibson?
Yeah,
I think he
yeah,
might have. Yeah.
yeah.
He looked quick,
Hmm.
like lateral movement and his and just a solid burst out of the backfield. Like he looked like a really solid option behind Ramondre.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I
No.
was going to say, felt like I had to mention him since we couldn't really pinpoint anyone on the offense.
Yeah, I mean he was definitely helping them on those. I think there was like a sequence in the second half. I think it was like the third quarter that he got a couple runs like back to back to back, and they were all positive gains. He's definitely more fit for that outside zone scheme. So it's a good switch up compared to like Ramondre, who's more of a north south runner, like just downhill like bruiser. So hopefully they incorporate. I don't want to see Gibson completely out of the lineup, but
Mhm.
If you could, obviously you're going to play Ramondre, but if you just play the hot hand approach between Gibson and Hasty, like they could find some positive plays with those two. So yeah, I agree. I agree. He did produce when he needed to.
Really, really solid day from Hasty.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we're going to move on to the Patriots and Rams talk. So on the offensive end and defensive end, Carlos, did you have anything you wanted to start off with? Like any initial thoughts?
So this should legitimately, because I think you said it earlier. I think you said that they didn't have like that good of a game on the ground against the Bears. Maybe I'm wrong. I think you mentioned it earlier. I will slightly disagree with you on that because I genuinely think that they produced better than they have like the past like 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And this game in particular could be a perfect game to keep that stride going, and it could be their get right game for the running offense because the Rams' run defense is almost non-existent, and this is the perfect opportunity for Ramondre to have like 100+ yard rushing game, for Hasty or Antonio Gibson to get a receiving touchdown, something like this is the defense that you want to do that against because
Mhm.
their pass defense, the Rams' pass defense is extremely good, and maybe it's not their secondary, but their pass rush is very good. So this is the perfect opportunity for them to have that get right game and truly be a run first team.
Mhm. And I'm really glad you mentioned the Rams' poor run defense and how they can really get the run game going this week. Because I think one of the issues with Alex Van Pelt's struggles this year in terms of um, coming up with plays and devising plays, which has been a big criticism of him from the fans,
Mhm.
um, is he he runs a West Coast offense, and it's really difficult to establish your West Coast offense if your run game isn't strong, which it hasn't been. They took a
Mhm.
step up, like you said last week, but
Mm.
for the most part, the run blocking has not been there. The running gaps are closed up like immediately, and Ramondre
Yeah.
has to just try and make magic and do what he can. Which I mean, the best part of his game is being able to like barrel forward for a few more extra
Mm.
yards, which he has done. But it's really hard for them to get the run game going consistently. And I think, like you said, if they can really establish the run game, that opens up the rest of the offense. They could run more play action, which I think you really have to do against this Rams defense and their pass coverage. They've been, like you said, they've been really good. But yeah, I think I just wanted to add that
Mhm.
that's going to be really important in terms of the offense. Defensively, I'm really interested to see how they handle both Cup and Puka Nakua
Mhm.
because the Patriots have run one of the highest percentages of man coverage in the league so far this season. Um, and I'm just curious because I don't really see them significantly moving away from man to zone coverage for this game. So I want to ask you, Carlos, because there's only one Christian Gonzalez. What
Mhm.
if they throw him on Nakua? Who do you have on Cup? Like, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what you think their plan is for the secondary.
Travis Hunter. That's their plan. No, no, but genuinely, I Puka and Cooper Cup, they eat zones up. Like they're so good at finding openings in zone. So them playing man, I honestly think is better. Um, I do think those two receivers are really good route runners, but I trust Gonzo to lock down whoever I think Gonzo's gonna be put on Cooper Cup. That's just my guess. Um, I do think that they're gonna trust Marcus Jones on Puka Nakua. They've been only if Duggar isn't back because they've been playing Jonathan Jones like all over the secondary and putting him at safety in some packages. Same thing with Christian Gonzalez, like I remember seeing like one or two plays that they had him running back as a free safety. So they're spinning the dial a little bit. They're trying to confuse the defense, but if Kyle Duggar's back, then I could see Jonathan Jones being the one to match up with Puka Nakua. But if he's not, then I think Jonathan Jones is going to roam once again, and they're going to have Marcus Jones just sticking with Nakua. It could be another situation of Garrett Wilson and Devonte Adams that like one of them ends up producing, but it's better than both, right? So
Yeah.
you just need to. This is what honestly, this is where the pass defense or the pass rushers need to really step up because the Rams offensive line, they're relatively good, but they've barely gotten healthy. And I think like last week was their first time playing in a long time together. Um, so this is where they really need to take advantage and help out the secondary because this Rams passing offense could be very dangerous if you give them enough time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let that primetime game, the Monday night game, fool me with just the Rams' production on offense. Simply put, um, but yeah, like you said, I think you said it perfectly. The pass rush really needs to get there, and I mean, we'll see how they do. I know we mentioned the Bears' offensive line really not being super stellar, not really being a really reliable group. So we'll see how they do against. We'll see how the pass rush can get to Stafford, but also the run defense. Kyron Williams, he can hurt you if you don't play the run game well. And Mayo continuously this season has talked about controlling the front line. So
Mm-hmm.
they're really going to need to do that because if you don't, Kyron Williams is going to get you, and then you got Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua out there.
Yeah.
My like you said, you got to kind of not like pick and choose, but you got to rely on what you have. It's just the thing that scares me about like Marcus Jones on like either Cup or Nakua is really just the height
Yeah.
and like the size difference that really hurts him. Like I remember 2 seasons ago, yeah, it was his rookie year against the Bengals. Like T Higgins, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
He was always on T Higgins.
Mm-hmm.
He always got put on T Higgins, and Higgins had a
Yeah.
great game. Um, yeah, we'll definitely see how that matches up. Again, do you think they're going to run man coverage more than likely? But yeah, I think in terms of the run defense, again, it's the second, like the linebacker unit, the second force of the run game that really needs to step up. Like Jelani Tavai, Sion Taki, they all got to step up and make plays to shut down the run game, or else I think Kyron Williams is going to have a good game because I still don't fully trust the front four to contain the run like
Yeah.
on a consistent level. They haven't proven that they can do that against uh, a really like above average like a line.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is going to be a big Keon White game because the interior line of the Rams offense has not been the best. They've been shaky. I know they're getting healthier, like I said, but Keon White is so good up the middle. And if he can disrupt all that and just force them to, do some quick passes or something, like just change the game, that could be a very big factor in terms of how comfortable they are running what they want to run.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, I think we can move on to game predictions here. Carlos, what's your final score prediction, your offensive MVP, and your projected defensive MVP for Sunday?
So score prediction, I'm gonna stick with the momentum. I'm gonna go with them winning 3 of the last 4. So I'm gonna go with a win of 23-16. I think they're gonna hold the Rams pretty low on offense. I think the defense is gonna step up. Um, I hope I'm not wrong because I would love like we talked about it so much at the beginning. Like a win this week would mean so much to this team. Um, and not just like right now, but in the long term as well. So I think a win of 23-16 is going to happen. That's my prediction. Offensive MVP, I have to go with Drake May. I think he's going to do something to help this team. It's going to be on his shoulders, even though he's just a rookie. He's going to perform. Um, and then for the defensive MVP, I'm going to go with because I know I mentioned Keon White, but he's been a little bit shaky. So I'm going to go with a safer pick here. And I think you know who I'm going with. I think Christian Gonzalez is going to completely lock down whoever he's on, whether it's Cooper Cup or Puka Nakua.
Mhm.
I think I'll even go out and predict that I think he's going to hold them either one of them to less than 40 yards for the whole game. That's going to be my prediction too. So I think he'll be the defensive MVP. He's going to completely negate one of their, weapons from the offense, and he's going to make it a really tough day for the Rams.
That's pretty reasonable. My game prediction not as encouraging as yours.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they lose. I don't see the Rams playing as bad as they did Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be like 27-21 Rams.
Okay.
I feel like the offense does get going a little bit, but I just think the Rams have a better day on offense than the Pats do, simply put.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive MVP, you took May, so I'm going to go Ramondre. I'm going to go
I was
Ramondre.
going to say,
I
yeah.
think he has one of his better games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were talking about earlier, the way you're going to get the offense going this game is establishing the run. And I think they'll be able to do that, opening up more opportunities on the offense to open up the passing game. So I think Ramondre is going to have a good game. Defense, if he does return, I think Kyle Duggar will be one of the most important, as he typically is when he plays. He'll be one of the most important defensive players out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I mean that's reasonable. I really like the Ramondre one. If it wasn't May, I would have said Ramondre just because he has the opportunity to make a difference this game.
Did we want to talk about anything else? I know we have Christian Barmore. We didn't really
Do you
mention
want to
him.
talk about? I know you wanted to talk about Alex Van Pelt for a little bit.
Oh yeah, we can talk about Pelt. So I want to start off by asking just your general thoughts on how Van Pelt has handled the offense so far this year. So I know a lot of people are criticizing his play calling and his sequencing of plays and just how he sequences plays throughout the drive. So I just wanted to get your general opinion before I start sounding off a little bit.
So with Van Pelt, or with just offensive coordinators in general, but with Van Pelt in particular, I'm usually like very, I don't want to say optimistic, but I give them the benefit of the doubt. And when I say like Van Pelt in particular, it's because I know he doesn't have a lot to work with. Like I completely understand that. But with that being said, there have been many instances this season that, and I don't do this often. That's why I'm like prefacing with that. There's many instances this season that I'm just like, what was that play call? Or like, what are we doing? Like, why did we do that? But I will say against the Bears, there were multiple drives that I was like, that was beautiful sequencing. Or like that play calling sequence was perfect. Like that's exactly what they needed to do, and it clearly worked. So I don't know if it was just because of the momentum or what was going on with the Bears. I don't want to be a Bill Belichick and just say, oh, the Bears suck, so that's why they did good. But there were multiple instances that I was like, he looked like a competent play caller and he knew what he was doing. So once again, we've been harping on this phrase multiple times this show, but it's a what have you done for me lately type of league. And if we're going based off that, last week the arrow was pointing up for Van Pelt. So we'll see if that completely changes this week, but just going off of last week's performance, he did really well, and that was, I think, the best game that he's called all season.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I think it goes back to us just saying patience. We gotta let it play out a little longer before we can jump to like any major conclusions. But I just wanted to bring it up because I feel like Van Pelt's name is a hot topic right now. Just people saying he shouldn't come back, other people arguing that he should. Where am I trying to go at this point? I'm not like a Alex Van Pelt truther or anything. I think he has done a really spotty and inconsistent job in terms of his play calling and sequencing plays. But again, like you said, last weekend was one of his better days play calling. But I think strictly from the standpoint of developing Drake May, I think you might have to retain him next season because if like you don't want another situation where you have your rookie QB who worked well with this one offensive coordinator and who helped him in his development, and then switch it to Matt Patricia and everything goes downhill from there. I think Alex Van Pelt has been, and Mayo said it this morning too, has been the driving force in May's development. And I think we've seen May significantly improve from where he was at the beginning of the summer. Um, and just from the standpoint of May's development, I think Van Pelt has been a huge part of that. I don't think you can kind of just chuck him to the side at the end of the season. I think you kind of got to keep him and like to kind of defend him a little bit. He doesn't have the best resources to establish his offense, like the run
Mm-hmm.
game.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents on it because
Mm-hmm.
I know this morning Mayo talked about Van Pelt being crucial in May's development. May said Van Pelt has been a huge motivator for him, and Hunter Henry even had some thoughts about about Van Pelt, saying that he likes how Van Pelt like thinks about football, how he operates, and there's just been a lot of defenders for Van Pelt
Yeah.
within the organization. I want to give my 2 cents on that. It's
Yeah.
a hot
No,
topic.
I kind of agree with you. Like, it's not. I don't think they should let him go. I know there's people saying like, oh yeah, there has to be someone to take the blame for it all at the end of the season, and that's most likely going to fall on one of the coordinators. And one of the coordinators, you can only choose from two, right? So I don't think DeMarcus Covington's going anywhere. So it would have to be Van Pelt. Um, but yeah, I don't like the idea of them giving their rookie another offensive coordinator. It's going to be the same cycle that they did with Mac Jones, which I don't want. I know people are saying like, "Oh, bring Brian Dable in as the OC." I would love that idea, but he's gone in a year if that's the case. Like that's
Mhm.
literally if you're hoping for them to win and to be successful and for Drake May to take a huge leap with Brian Dable as offensive coordinator, he's not going to be the offensive coordinator in 2 years. Like he's going to be gone. He's going to get another head coaching job. He's going to get some sort of promotion somewhere else. So that's I don't think that's good for May's development. You just see what it did to Mac Jones. I know I'm like Josh Allen's like a different quarterback, obviously, but you saw what losing Dable did to him, and for them switching OCs over and over again. Um, so it matters. Like you see like uh, okay, when I say this, I'm not saying like some hot take as if like he sucks now, but Pat Mahomes is a completely different quarterback now compared to how he was when Eric Bieniemy was his OC. Like when Eric Bieniemy was his offensive coordinator, he was having like huge yardage seasons with like 40 plus touchdowns, and it was deep bombs and it was crazy. Now with Matt Nagy, they're still successful, obviously, but he's not the same quarterback as he was back then. Um, so you just have to look at it like that. Like offensive coordinators matter. I know Van Pelt was never touted as some big play caller, like a guru when it came to the offensive side of the ball, but he was touted as a QB guru and like some guy that is so good at developing QBs. He understands them, he knows what to do, and you're seeing that. So I would love for him to be like the QB's coach like later on if he wants to stick around if they really want him there. But um I do think next season I don't see why it would be beneficial for Drake May in particular to not have him as his OC once again.
And I think Elliot Wolf is another one who's been really criticized. And I'm here to
That one
defend him.
I blocked that one out. I think that's so pointless. Like it's
Yeah,
one off season. Like what
yeah,
do you expect them to do?
exactly. But I think he's done a good job so far. And the most important thing for them this season was to focus on the
Quarterback.
development of whatever rookie quarterback that they
Mm,
drafted. And so far, Wolf has made that a priority, and they have heavily invested in terms of their coaching staff and other areas
even if they haven't
to
been that
invest in
successful.
May's future. I mean, you look at Van Pelt. Yeah, he was kind of like he was the assistant OC in
Mm,
Cleveland his entire career, quarterbacks coach, like mainly a quarterbacks coach. Helps in May's development. Bob McAdoo helps in May's development. TC McCartney helps in May's development. Like they're bringing in these like quarterback specialists to help in May's development, and
mm.
they've put a huge emphasis on that, and it looks like it's really paying dividends right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm not gonna sit here and say like he knocked it out of the park with all those hirings, and like
Yeah.
they're the best. But clearly, it's working for Drake May. Um, and on top of that, I now that we're talking about it on like we're on the topic, I get so annoyed when people are like, "Oh, well, you can't include Drake May in like his accomplishments and like what he's done this like Drake May fell to him. Like that was the obvious choice." You know, you're on Twitter just as much as I am, Andrew. You know how many people were saying pick Marv. Oh, trade back and get JJ McCarthy. Like there was so many people saying like those were legitimate debates that people were saying do not take Drake May, take Marvin Harrison, trade back, like build for the next draft. Like you have to give him credit for it. Like he's stuck
Yeah.
at 3 and he picked the future of the Patriots franchise. So you can't say, "Oh, look how bad their draft class is." Like he got the most important position out of any position in football. And he seems to have knocked that one out of the park. So you have to give him credit for that. Um that's my closing argument.
And I love the video on Hard Knocks where the Giants GM called on
Mhm.
draft night, and Elliott was just like, no, no, lose my number. Like, no,
Yeah.
we're not trading back.
Yeah.
And they just had a lot of faith in May.
Mhm.
And again, it's paying dividends.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so annoyed with that crowd of like, keep
Mhm.
Zappy, keep Mac, get Marvin Harrison Jr., trade back, get JJ McCarthy, trade back for Michael Penix Jr. Like we'll get Shador Sanders in the next. Like Drake May would be number one pick in this draft if it weren't
Mhm.
for him coming out last season. So
Yeah,
you're
I wouldn't really. I'm not super huge on the quarterbacks coming out of this class, and that was
which
the
isn't good.
narrative. That was the narrative at the time
Yeah,
of
yeah.
last year's class. It's like you don't want to
hmm
invest your future in the quarterbacks next year.
which is why they shouldn't even be playing for a lower draft pick either. So that like goes hand in hand with it. You don't want to get the number one pick and have a team. There's no teams willing to trade up for a quarterback. Like when the Patriots were number one pick, when they had the worst record in the league, I was over here coping with myself. Like, you know what? Some team's gonna want Shador Sanders. Some team's gonna want Jalen Milrow. Like some team's gonna want Cam Ward. I now that we're seventh or sixth, whatever, I can really step back and say, you know what, one of these quarterbacks is probably going to go top 5, but not number 1. So you
Yeah,
don't want to
you
be
got to
picking
face
that high.
reality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in this draft in particular, you do not want to be picking that high if you want them to trade back and get a bunch of these assets that you magically think are going to appear. Like if it were a Caleb Williams in a draft or a Jaden Daniels, Drake May, like that was a big draft for quarterbacks, and we got lucky to get one in that draft.
it looks like it's going to be a really good draft for quarterbacks.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I still think Caleb Williams is going to be a good quarterback.
yeah,
I think it's more of the system he's in right now and the operation going on around him that
mm,
has led. Drake May looks good. Jane Daniels looks awesome.
mm,
And even like Bo Nix, he looks solid.
yeah,
And we haven't even seen JJ McCarthy yet. So
mm,
yeah, it could be a really good class. Yeah, I think I saw Brett Coleman tweet this out, or it was Brett Coleman who tweeted this out. He said something on the lines of like, "This is one of the draft classes where you see the team, or like the draft in terms of the draft order, you see the teams and look at their needs, and you're like doing a mock draft, and you just kind of throw your hands up and like spin a wheel for who goes where. Like, it's a
yeah,
very strange combination in terms of the draft order and the
mm,
prospects who are currently projected to go in that range.
yeah,
But I mean, Patriots, they're still picking number 7. That's still a really high
yeah,
draft pick. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I thought Kelvin Banks, I thought he was going to go top 5 um, before the collegiate, or like
Yeah, I know
at the
what you're
very
saying.
beginning of the collegiate season. But now, as we see like how the offensive tackle class is kind of shaping out, not saying they're bad. I'm
Mhm.
just saying they can get like Kelvin Banks at 7. I don't think they can get
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, there's people saying like I'm pretty sure they're picking 6 right now, and my tweet said 7, and people were like, "Oh, they're not picking 7, they're picking 6." That makes no difference. Like I promise you that one spot makes no difference because we're not going for a QB. Like we're lucky enough to be able to say that. So it's like them picking at 6 or 7, like there's going to be Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks there if that's who you want. There's going to be a what's a good wide receiver comparison? Like a Luther Burden or Tedero McMillan, most likely there. Like you're okay. Like if they pick top 12, I'm not that worried. And especially if they finish like obviously if they're picking top 12, if they're picking 12th, they won some more games than they did last season. So that's a like that's a plus. That's a positive. They're okay. Like no need to worry. Like it's not like we're missing out. I understand the hype around Travis Hunter. I would love Travis Hunter, but like there's no need to be like, oh, you know what? Let's throw this whole franchise down the drain just so we could get Travis Hunter and say, oh, you know, we got the number one pick. Like we got Travis. Like there's no need to do that. We have our QB. Let's build around him. Let's be patient.
Luther Burden's an underrated first round pick. I mean,
I'm not a big fan of him.
really?
Yeah, I mean, at least for the Patriots, but he
Oh
hasn't.
yeah, for the
Yeah,
Patriots, I like it's different, but I don't know. This is kind of random, but he played Missouri played at UMass,
UMass. Mhm.
and well, we got absolutely wiped. But like just look at like he's so smooth, he's so fluid as a route runner. Like he looks so good. So
I'm gonna see Ashton Genty on Saturday in person. So
oh really? Oh
we're gonna see. I know maybe I'm gonna come back next week and say they need to go running back first round.
maybe. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, if they picked Ashton, imagine they picked Ashton Genty. Like, would you be mad at that? I wouldn't be mad at it. I just feel like, all right.
Yeah, I'd be more mad that considering who's still on the board, but
Yeah,
like obviously it would be malpractice if they took a running back. But
yeah, yeah, obviously.
as far as like the fun in it, yes,
That'd be
I
so
would be
fun.
happy.
That'd be
Yeah.
so fun. I want to watch Ashton Genty run people over in training camp. That'd
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
awesome.
We could see that.
Yeah, I think that wraps up. We're kind of going off record about Pats and Rams here, but yeah, I think that wraps up our show for today. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. We really appreciate all you guys who come and watch us weekly. Yeah, I'm at SPGS on Twitter. Carlos at Los Talks Pats. Both of our handles are under our faces. But yeah, so we will let you guys know when we go live next week, and we'll see you guys in the next one.